This is Solve It for Kids.
Hello, my amazing and curious friends. My name is Jennifer, the Dean of all things STEM and STEAM, and this is Solve It for Kids, the science podcast that gives kids and families a peek inside the real world of scientists, engineers, and experts as they solve problems in their jobs using creativity, cooperation, and critical thinking. And now please welcome to the show my podcast partner, Galactic Space Geek, Jeff Gagne.
Hello, Jennifer, and hello, listeners. We all see this out in our worlds, and this is one of those things where we've all seen it, but we don't really think about it until we directly ask the question.
Yes. So this is going to be a very intriguing conversation, I think, where we're going to learn a lot. What problem are we solving today?
How do animals cooperate with each other?
How do animals cooperate with each other? You know, this is a fascinating question. So what guests do we have with us to answer this question, Jeff?
Today, we have the right person to answer. We have Dr. Lauren Robinson. She is a psychologist and an animal welfare scientist.
Welcome to the show, Dr. Lauren.
Hi, how are you all?
We are thrilled to have you, right? And we're going to talk about all different kinds of animals because you've studied a lot of them.
Wow, you can't just pick one, can you? They're all
Right.
great.
Well, so I'm curious, as a kid, did you always love animals?
Yeah, I definitely did. You know, I had dogs and cats growing up, but I didn't know I wanted to study them, or I really didn't know you could other than being a veterinarian, you know, so definitely loved them. But it wasn't until college that I discovered that you can make a job out of this.
Wow.
It's very easy. Very competitive area of science because everyone loves animals, right?
Right.
Right.
I'm really glad that I am, you know, lucky enough to get to work with them. So yeah, I always liked animals. Had golden retrievers and Samoyeds and labs, any kind of cat that would come to our door and all that.
Okay, so how did you end up choosing to not do the veterinarian route?
Yeah.
So initially I thought I wanted to go to med school because I really found, you know, biology really interesting.
Okay.
Okay.
And then I took a chemistry class and I was really bad at it. Bad at it.
Okay.
It happens. We're not all good at everything.
No.
So I was up at the University of Washington, which is a college in Seattle, and I was a psychology major. So that's kind of about studying behavior of different species and individuals, mostly on people, but some of us get to work with animals. And I took what's called an elective. So this is just an extra class you can take on animal behavior. And I was in love with it. I had no idea.
That's awesome.
And, you know, from there, I just talked to every professor I could until one of them, you know, offered me the chance to work with animals. And I kind of ran with it. You know, when you know the direction, you just go down it.
Okay.
That's fantastic. So what animals did you start with? Because we're going to talk about like a lot of the different ones, but kind of what got you first started with working with animals?
Initially, I was working with dogs. So they'd already done some research and some science. And so I was left with what's called data. So those are like the numbers that we gather for science, you know? And so I was doing math with that. So it turns out I'm pretty good with math. So good thing.
That's good.
All right.
Math is good. Love math. And then I was volunteering with a researcher at the Woodland Park Zoo, which is a zoo in Seattle.
Okay.
And I was going out, I was watching the animals, and I was watching grizzly bears, penguins, elephants, and hippos. So those are really what got me started.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of different animals. When you're at a zoo, you know, there's a lot of different species you can work with.
Oh, that's awesome.
Really fun.
And it sounds like you got started with some really cool ones. I mean, lots of animals are great, but when you work with some of the really fun ones, that has got to really pique your interest and want to get you to keep going.
Very cool. Yeah, the bears were great. I really love the elephants. The penguins are a bit smelly. I'm not a big penguin person.
They are.
They're a bit smelly. And
Yeah.
the penguins didn't do a lot, but that's okay. Who doesn't like a nap? But but the elephants and the grizzly bears were really cool. I really enjoyed getting to work with them
Awesome.
and watch that. Yeah, it was really nice.
That is very cool. All right, before we get deep into our specific question, what is an animal welfare scientist?
Oh, that's a really good one, right? So this is a term that's coming over more from the United Kingdom. This is where, animal welfare science really started. And what it means is I study the happiness and the physical health of animals. So I don't go out there to treat anything, but I spend a lot of time watching. And, just like nowadays, we all think about our health and, how happy we are and what we need to do to take care of ourselves. I go out there and kind of say, what do we need to make these animals happy? Do we need to give them new toys, new things to do? Do we need to make sure that they're all getting along? And so an animal welfare scientist is really in charge of, trying to figure out how happy the animals are and then finding ways to make sure everybody is happy and increasing it if we have to.
So do you work on the enrichment activities for them as well? Can you talk about that?
I don't usually design the enrichment, but it's possible that I could. So do we need to define enrichment and what it is?
I mean, sure, you can give examples of it. That would be great.
Okay, so enrichment is stuff where we add it to the environment so that animals act like they would in nature, right? So if we just put food out in a bowl, that's not very interesting to animals, right?
Yes.
So instead we go out, we hide it, we might put it in different toys so they have to play with the toy to get out food.
Ah, okay.
Things like, hanging barrels so that they play more and they, can climb more and things like that. And so I don't usually design enrichment, but I might go out there and watch if they're using it. Them to and deciding making suggestions. Do we need to add more enrichment? Maybe we need to try a different type. So those are things that I would do if I'm suggesting things. So I go out and just figure out what they're doing and which different toys they're playing with and stuff.
Okay. Yeah. That's really good. So now the main question is, how do animals cooperate with each other? And this sounds like it's not going to be a very short answer, but kind of how do you even figure that out, right? What do you do as a psychologist to study the animals?
Yeah, well, I think everybody in the human world cooperates, right? Humans are the best.
We hope so, right?
Let's hope so, yes. So cooperation is really about working together, and there's lots of different very sciencey definitions. But for today, we'll just say working together for a goal, right? So maybe we both get the goal, maybe one of us gets the goal, but either way, we work together to get it, right? And people do this, like I said, all the time.
Yes.
People, even though not everybody's easy to cooperate with, the entire world is built on cooperation, right? So even the fact that we are talking on the internet is a very complicated form of cooperation. Somebody had to come up with technology, they had to work together, somebody had to make the computers and come up with that. Somebody had to build the places we're living in and design them with other people, right? So humans are really amazing at cooperations, non-human animals, I'm just going to call them animals from now on, but not to forget that we are animals. They can do cooperation as well, but they don't necessarily have to do it to the same degree that people do.
Okay.
And so the fact that people are so good at cooperation is probably one of the reasons that we're everywhere, because we can work together to solve problems. Animals do that too, They work together to raise their babies. They work together to hunt.
Okay.
Yeah, they do a lot of stuff where they have to work together to come up with a solution.
Okay. My brain is kind of wanting to start right at the beginning. So when you were studying in school about animals and you knew you didn't want to do veterinary medicine, did you start learning about animal psychology?
Kind of, yeah. So working with animals can cross a couple different sciences. So I come from the psychology route, but of course there's people in biology, and then there's
Mm-hmm.
people called
Right.
anthropology. So this is kind of studying
Okay.
evolution. Some people study fossils or living animals or both.
Right.
And so it really depends on where you come from. For me, I love the psychology of it. I like, looking at things like how you think and act
Yes.
and things and who you are as an individual. So their personality. So that comes from very much psychology kind of areas.
Okay.
And so I honestly don't think I knew exactly what I wanted to study in animals at first, other than I wanted to work with zoo animals. And so I
Okay.
got into a master's at the University of Edinburgh, which is in Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
So whole new country. And it's a master's in applied animal behavior and animal welfare. And I said, I
Okay.
want to work with animals, I want to work with zoo animals. What can I work with? And they said, well, we've got these snow monkeys up at the Highland Wildlife Park.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I know. It's a rough gig, right?
Yeah. Snow monkeys. Oh, shucks.
Yes.
They're gorgeous, of course. And the Scottish Highlands are just obscenely beautiful.
They are. They're phenomenal.
Colors and like the heather, which is a type of plant, and just beautiful, beautiful. And I designed a whole project where I was going to look at how they learn from each other. So that's another way we can cooperate. We can learn, we can teach each other things, right? But the key to animal science, I think, is knowing that animals are going to outsmart you or do things you don't expect. And I had a whole experiment designed, and it turns out they already knew what I was going to have them do. I was going to have them learn to wash potatoes, which is a very famous thing that they do in Japan, which is where they're from. So they can either be called snow monkeys or Japanese macaques. That's their official.
Okay.
All right.
So I was like, great, monkeys already know how to wash potatoes. Good for them. They just have to learn to cook them and we're set. But I had to redesign something all new. And so I ended up coming with a study looking at how motivated they were to interact with enrichment. And it was fine. So starting to realize that I like these kind of studies. And then I started a PhD with someone who studies animal personality. And I didn't know I liked animal personality, but it turns out I do. And then so on and so on and so on it went. So I just kind of added expertise in different areas as I found them to work. And so now, yeah. So, I'm a big fan of not deciding your whole path early on.
Sometimes that works best.
Understand.
Right? Yeah.
It does. I mean, even if it doesn't always work to the extreme degree I've probably taken it, it's still good to be open, And so what I have learned through my whole journey is that I'm really interested in animals as individuals. And so even cooperation, it's about working together, but different individuals, how they do it. So sometimes we look at the group, which is what I've been doing historically with cooperation.
Right.
But if someone ever springs up and gives me a permanent tenure track job is what they're called, I would really like to look at cooperation in the individuals. So understand how the individuals.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
Ideas for a while, then percolating.
Yeah. So, okay, can you give us some kind of specific examples of some of the research projects that you've done with pick whatever animal you want? You've done a lot of them.
Yeah. I have. So I was doing research at the Wolf Science Center, which is in Austria.
Okay.
So they have group house dogs living together because we want to be able to look at what it's like for dogs that live like wolves. And then they have group houses. And so dogs with dogs, wolves with wolves. You would never house them together. Very dangerous, bad idea.
Right.
Nobody wolf as a pet. Don't get a wolf dog hybrid. They're horrible pets. Don't do it. All for dogs. Don't get anything with wolf in it. But I was out there and I was looking at if wolves and dogs could learn to choose their cooperative partner. So there are, it's really cool. Yeah. So there's a thing called the string pulling paradigm. It's very fancy. It's not so fancy when you think about it. So there's a string or a rope, and it goes around the back of a table so that if one person pulls it out or one animal pulls on one side and no one else pulls the other side, the rope comes out.
Okay.
Two individuals pull, so one has the rope and the other has the other side of the rope. This table comes forward and they get a treat, something they really
Oh,
Okay.
so they have to do it together. The rope is separated far enough out that if only one does it, they're not going to be able to get the tray to move forward.
right. Okay.
Okay.
And so there are these amazing trainers at the Wolf Science Center. They are just so knowledgeable and so experienced, and they're able to actually work with the wolves and the dogs. And so we were doing a study where we had to see if the dogs and the wolves would understand that they had to pick the partner that would pull the rope with them rather than a partner that wouldn't. So spoiler, it didn't work. Didn't pick the difference, but that happens a lot in animal research, like we've talked about, right? And really, it's probably that they already knew the trainers. And so they already were like, who cares? I know that I always get treats from them eventually. So even I think they could have learned it. I just think, we needed to figure out another way to do it, which is often the case in science,
You have to figure out the right incentive, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, if you have a relationship, a lot of people, I'm sure kids listening have dogs, right?
Yes.
And your dog trusts to give it a treat on the regular. It knows you, right?
Yes.
Well, the dogs and the wolves, they knew the trainers, and they're loving, that it's like, well, it doesn't matter who I pick. Eventually I'll get treats later. I don't have to for this. I don't have to pay attention. They're getting fed plenty.
Yes.
So we tried, and I do think that they know the individuals. They definitely know the different trainers. I think, yeah, like you said, the incentive was just not high enough that time.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, taking that one step further, do animal scientists sort of rotate more or help each other so that there's a new trainer working with animals that's less known?
In this case, it's really tough because wolves are, as you can imagine, pretty dangerous. We have to be really careful. And so in this case, maybe we needed to find a whole new way of testing it. We can't put anybody in there. It has to be someone they know.
Right.
So we probably have to come up with a whole new way of doing it. But, scientists collaborate and we cooperate all the time, right?
Yes.
Right.
But maybe in the future I can look at it, and I had a wonderful PhD student out there, Maida, who recently got her PhD. So I've seen her, yay. He did stuff with pet dogs and it worked really well, So with pet dogs, she was able to control a lot more. Maida is really patient. She's so good. Yeah, she's so patient. So she really figured out how to do it. And with pet dogs, you don't have to worry about it in the same way. And so maybe pet dogs are better for studying that. Or maybe, to study it in wolves, we need a whole new way of doing it where they don't interact with a person directly.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That happens a lot in animal science, but the scientists ourselves, we try to cooperate a lot. We really try to
right.
Their ideas. Sometimes it means we disagree on ideas. Sometimes, plenty of times. That's part of being a scientist, is learning how to, disagree, but in a polite way.
Yes. No, that's good. I mean, we talk about that a lot on the show about how working together makes you can sometimes comes up with different ideas that maybe you never thought of, right? And a different way of doing things. But I want to hear, you've done some work with monkeys too. Can you tell us about some of those cooperation type experiments that you've done?
Sure. So I worked with some bonobos, and I can't share too much about this one because it's still ongoing. But bonobos are kind of like chimpanzees. They're equally related to us. They're just smaller. Okay. Behavior is a little less aggressive. People think they aren't as aggressive, but they still have plenty of aggression. So they still can scare you if you're not paying attention. I had one very famous bonobo. I know that sounds strange, but Kanzi is more famous than I will ever be.
Oh, wow.
And I wasn't paying attention, and he let me know by banging on the window to like make sure I was paying attention to him.
Oh, well, there you go.
He's a star. He
Okay.
knows. But, in my last job out at the University of Michigan, I was looking at that with a whole group of scientists, right? So there were scientists in Scotland, this time at St. Andrews, and Germany, and things like that.
Wow.
And we were working with bonobos and, trying to work with children. They've kept the child's research going on since I've left. But yeah, we were using computers to try and test it.
Oh.
Yeah. So coming up with different computer programs to test their ability to cooperate. So didn't have to interact with people directly.
Right.
Okay.
And when you're using computers, you might be trying to test how fast they do something or if they can work together on different computers, things like that.
Oh, wow.
So that's really exciting. We're still working on that. So I can't go into too much,
Right.
all published. But yes, we do a lot of different stuff. Yeah, we'll try anything if we've got the money.
Yeah.
And we've got funding, and it's ethical, of course.
Yes, of course. Yes.
All of our research that I have done is non-invasive, so that means nobody's, unhappy. If they ever like the project, they leave. They're like, bye, you do this.
Yeah.
It's exciting, and you're always learning when you're working with animals.
Oh, I'm sure.
I bet.
I'm sure. Yeah.
The more I learn from animal researchers, the more I learn just how similar animals can be to humans in their very, very different behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
You shared that one little story about the famous bonobo banging on the window. Because you've worked with so many different animals, do you have another funny story of a different animal that happened while you were working with them?
Sometimes you have really weird moments. There was this animal at one of the places, and her name was Squishy.
Oh.
Which is a terrible,
that's cute.
terrible name, but she was super cute, and all the other animals would be running around. All the monkeys, the rhesus monkeys, they're running around, and I'm spending all this time watching them, and I'm, making note of all the different behaviors. And I'm pretty sure Squishy was watching me.
Ah.
It's really weird. I would look at her and she wasn't a lot of times you don't want to make eye contact with monkeys. They find it threatening.
Right.
And so I try to avoid that. But sometimes I would accidentally catch eye contact with Squishy and she just didn't seem to care, She kind of was happy. And so that's really important in animal science, right? We don't want to project what we think is going on, but sometimes it's really hard not to think that, they're doing something,
Okay.
Yes.
It sounds like Squishy was a little bit of a human researcher.
Yeah,
Maybe she was the research scientist studying you.
Impact on me, really let me know who, was watching who. But it's really important, animals look like they're doing a lot of the stuff that we do. And I think it's true, monkeys will to each other and they'll huddle together and, they're very warm and friendly to each other. Well, sometimes, but we also have to remember that there's differences too, right? So nobody's going to display you for making eye contact, or at least not usually. So we have to learn to understand the species specifically as well, because they're not all like humans. So when a monkey smiles, it actually means it's really stressed and afraid.
Oh.
Yeah. And so a lot of times you'll see chimpanzees online and things, and they've got a big smile, and that's actually a really unhappy animal. So we have to remember that animals are different from us, even though we're related to them. Especially chimps, we're super related to them, but they use different signals to tell us stuff. And so, so much online is about having pet monkeys and things like that. This is a horrible idea. No pets I'm not a fan of pet anything exotic, okay? But we have to really understand the species before we, can start to understand the individuals because they are different than us,
Right.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely. So, of all of the animals that you've worked with, do you have any favorite species that you really enjoyed?
Yeah, I really love the snow monkeys. They have a lot of anger,
Oh.
and I really respect that. And then I like when, they don't like people. I think that's a reasonable way to be. I gave them space, they gave me space,
Right.
and they're gorgeous, and they're just really individuals. So I don't know. I like a lot of them, but the snow monkeys, their rage really spoke to me, their anger.
Well, it sounds like a distinct personality, right? That you kind of are drawn to.
Oh, definitely. The other part of my research is looking at animal personality. So just like people do have personality, but of course it's different. And then within the species, individuals are different, just like people are.
Yeah.
So it's a balance of understanding that we share a lot with animals, but then there's the differences we have to factor in. So we have to go somewhere in between there when
Right.
we're, factoring in all of that. But yes, individual differences in personality, which is, the consistent way that you act and you feel.
Right.
That is one of my favorite parts to study in animals, actually, because there are individuals like Squishy.
Yeah.
They're so different, and another animal I worked with, Petunia, which is a fantastic name, she was like also very relaxed. She was lower in the rankings. So monkeys often have someone who's in charge. And then
Okay.
charge. Petunia was pretty low, but she was really interested in like trying to chat with me. She would look at me.
Oh, okay.
There's these little things they do where they lip smack. So they like put their lips together and go at you. I know it sounds probably funny online, but like, and it's how they say like, hey, we're good, you're good, we're good, we're good, I'm good. And it's like effective.
Wow.
Yeah. And so sometimes
That's
they'll
fun.
do it at you when they know you well enough. It's really amazing.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
They're individuals. They're so different, and that's part of what I really love.
Well, this has been so fun. I've learned a lot about observing animals and all these kinds of things. So I'm curious because we're at that time in the episode where we like to ask our experts to give our listeners a challenge. So what is your challenge, Dr. Lauren?
Okay, so I am going to say that whenever you see an animal, try to describe what it's doing, right? So even if you don't have a dog or a cat, you can probably see a squirrel or, maybe there's a different kind of lizard around, even insects and things like that.
Right.
So describe what it's doing. Is the squirrel running up the tree? Is the insect sitting on a leaf? That's really where we start when we study animal behavior. Before we can get to looking at how they work together, we have to learn what they do in general. And so just
Right.
if it's your dog, okay, my dog is playing fetch, whatever it is, just start by like, what is it they're doing? How would you describe that? And see what you probably realize a lot of stuff.
So maybe you'll be creating some new animal psychologists down the road then.
I hope so. I'm going to be teaching more animal behavior and animal cognition classes. So if not here, though I have hope, hopefully the undergrads will be excited to learn.
That would be fantastic. Oh my gosh. Well, this was so much fun. I learned so much. Thank you so much for being on Solve for Kids,
Thank
Dr.
you,
Lauren.
Dr. Lauren.
Yeah, it was great. That was fun. Thank you for having me.
What an absolutely fun question to talk about and directly answer. There is no way that after listening to this episode, we are not going to be looking at animals differently and seeing how they cooperate with each other. For me, that's definitely going to be the deer in my neighborhood.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to watch my dog in the backyard, how she interacts with other animals around and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
But sure, you can go anywhere. You can go to zoos. You can just sit outside and watch them. I mean, I think this is really cool. And that's kind of what Dr. Lauren's talking about in her challenge, isn't it?
It definitely is a simple challenge, but we can take it as far as we each would like to. watch an animal and describe what they are doing. She told us that this is where animal research begins and how we start learning. This is the very beginning. So you can pick whichever animal you want to watch, and I'd be willing to bet as soon as you start watching, we're all probably going to be watching a little bit longer than we thought we'd be out there.
Yes, because watching allows you to learn. So make sure you take your notebook with you, young scientists. We like to take them with us. You can draw pictures of what you see and write notes and all this kind of stuff in your journal. And maybe if you want to do a crossover with science and literacy, you can write a story about it later too. Anything that you come up with, we would love to see. So feel free to reach out to us on our social media. We are at Kids Solve at Facebook, X, and Instagram. And don't forget to check out our website, solveitforkids.com, where we have information about this episode and all of our other episodes. And at the bottom of every episode page, we have books to recommend in case you want to learn more. So go and check it out.
So Jennifer and I have already shared the first animals that we will be out there watching. We really want to know which one you choose to watch. So until next time, you'll hear Jen and Jeff on the Science Podcast for Kids and Families. Solve it for kids.